Hello. Hmm. Hmm. Okay, then we were discussing SSC. SSC, you understand that person who is supposed to pay taxes to the government. That means he is liable to pay taxes because of his earning. And we can say that who is supposed to submit a return under Section 75, he is to be treated as an SSC. And who has crossed the general exemption limit, he is also to be treated as an SSC. Or who has been served a notice by the income tax department to submit a return, then he is also an SSC. And the person who is at default by the income tax authority, so he is also an SSC. That means if somebody treated the deputy commissioner treats him to be at default, then he would also be treated as an SSC. And the person who is supposed to get a return of income tax, which was earlier submitted by him or deposited by him into the government exchequer, he would also be treated as an SSC. So all these are actually definitions of SSC, who has got a TIN, TIN, tax identification number. So sometimes nowadays it is ETIN. So he is also an SSC. If somebody desires to be an SSC, then he will also be treated as an SSC. That means I am not having any income which is liable to pay taxes. Rather, I want to be an SSC. If I want to be an SSC, then of course at the same time I would be treated as an SSC. So when I desire to be an SSC, if I say that I desire to be an SSC, how can I become an SSC? You have an idea? The client goes to you and says that I want to become an SSC. I don't have necessary income to pay taxes on it, but how can I become an SSC? Sometimes you see that a person concerned needs a tax clearance certificate. So in that case, he will be having income tax clearance certificate. For the purposes like, if you want to apply for a piece of land from the Rajuk or for a plot from the Rajuk, then you need a tax clearance certificate. And again, if you want to supply goods to the government department, then you need a TIN. Sometimes if you want to supply goods to a company, the company also wants you to have a tax clearance certificate. So in those cases, people who do not have sufficient income to pay taxes, they have to obtain a tax clearance certificate from the income tax department. And in those circumstances, if somebody comes to you that I need to become an SSC or I desire to become an SSC, how can I become an SSC? What would be your suggestion? Any answer? You can obtain the TIN number that could be obtained online. There is no problem. You need to have an ID. That's the whole thing. And then when you have obtained the TIN, then you can submit a return to the Deputy Commissioner of Taxes showing an amount of income which is liable to pay taxes. So if you show an income and if you can get assessed, you want to be assessed. If you submit the return under Section 75, if you want to submit the return under Section 75, you can show the return and you can submit the return under the Universal Self-Assessment Scheme. So if you submit the return under the self-assessment scheme, whatever you show as your income, it will be accepted by the Deputy Commissioner of Taxes. So you will be given a receipt after submission of the return, and that receipt will be treated as assessment order. So if you try to obtain a tax clearance certificate, then the Deputy Commissioner of Taxes will issue a tax clearance certificate saying that Mr. So-and-so submitted the return showing income of Taka 3,50,000 and he has paid tax 3,500 Taka, say for example, and it has been paid in full. So this is the tax clearance certificate. So you will get that certificate. And if you want to apply for a piece of land from the Rajuk, or if you want to supply goods or participate in the bidding process as a supplier to a government organization or to a corporation, etc., then you can also submit that clearance certificate. And tax clearance certificate will enable you to compete in the bidding process or competition. So in that case, you can have the order from the company or from the government for supply of goods or services, whatever it is. So then you become an SSC. So these are the situations under which you can become an SSC. So you should have some ideas about the definition of SSCs. Okay, then come to the point, assessment year. What is an assessment year? Any idea about the assessment year?
যে বছরে হিসাব করা হয়।
Hishab. What kind of hishab is it?
স্যার যে এসএসসির ইনকামের হিসাবটা করা হয় যে বছরে, যেমন 19-20 এর ইনকামটা আমরা এসে 20-21 এ করব। এই 20-21টা হচ্ছে অ্যাসেসমেন্ট ইয়ার আর 19-20টা হচ্ছে ইনকাম ইয়ার।
Right. That means the assessment year is a period of 12 months following the income year, starting generally from the first day of July. So if the assessment year is 2021, it means it starts from July 20 and ends on 30th June 2021. This is the assessment year. But the current assessment year is, it has started from 1st of July 2021 and it will end on 30th June 2022. That means next year. So the assessment year started from the 1st day of July this year, and it will continue up to 30th June 2022. So this is the assessment year for the income of 2021. 2021 means July 20 to June 21. So when 30th June of 2021 ended, the assessment year started and continue to start up to 30th June 2022. So this is the assessment year in which assessment will be made on the income of the persons. So whenever a person has submitted a return, his income will be assessed by the Deputy Commissioner of Taxes. And the income year might be the full year, that means the whole of the 12 months, entire period of 12 months, or it might be 6 months, it might be 3 months during that period. And what we have said, that you are supposed to submit the return under section 75. 75 means whenever you think that you are liable to pay taxes or your income has crossed the general exemption limit, then you are supposed to pay the tax and the return, submit the return by the, tax day. Tax day means, what is the tax day? Any idea about the tax day?
No, sir.
30th November is the tax day every year. So you have to submit the return as an individual or as a firm or as an association of persons or as a Hindu undivided family by 30th November, starting from 1st of July. If you submit the return by 30th November, then you are not liable to pay any penalty apart from the tax. So you can submit the return under the self-assessment scheme you can determine your tax yourself. It means that you have got an advantage of submission of the return on your own. So that is the benefit, and you have to avail of it. And 30th day of November, that means you don't have to pay or submit the return on that day only, but you can submit the return before that day. Before that day means any day between 1st of July and 30th November. 30th November is the last day. But if you want to get it extended, that means if the time you want to get extended, then you have to apply to the Deputy Commissioner of Taxes for extension of the time. The Deputy Commissioner of Taxes can extend the time for 2 months. If you want to get it extended for any further period, then the Deputy Commissioner of Taxes will seek approval of the inspecting Joint Commissioner of Taxes. That means his supervising authority. And in that case, you can have 3 months extension. So that is the maximum period you can be extended for submission of the return. But there is a disadvantage for that. You have to pay the delay charges. So delay charges will be imposed on you apart from the tax. So that's why it's a disadvantage. So it is always better to submit the return and pay taxes before the tax day or on the tax day. Okay. Any question up to now? Then you come to the definition, Assistant Commissioner of Taxes. Assistant Commissioner of Taxes is the person who assesses the income of the people. And he is the class 1 officer. And that is the entry point into the income tax department as a class 1 officer. Generally, the Public Service Commission is responsible for recruiting assistant commissioners of taxes. So he is sometimes called assessing officer. And he is responsible for making assessments and realizing taxes from the assessees. But there are other officers who are also responsible for making assessments and realizing taxes. Those officers are the extra assistant commissioners of taxes and the deputy commissioners of taxes. Those two officers are also responsible for making assessments and realizing taxes, other than the assistant commissioner of taxes. So below the rank of the assistant commissioner of taxes, the rank of an extra assistant commissioner of taxes exists, and above the rank of the assistant commissioner of taxes, the post of the deputy commissioner of taxes exists. So there are 3 types of officers who are responsible for making assessments and realizing taxes. You should know one thing here. When you go to the definition of a deputy commissioner of taxes, you will see that this is an inclusive definition. An inclusive definition means deputy commissioner of taxes includes deputy commissioner of taxes, assistant commissioners of taxes, and extra assistant commissioners of taxes. So all these 3 kinds of officers are treated as deputy commissioners of taxes. In other words, they are treated as assessing officers. So when you see the assessment order framed or made by the deputy commissioner of taxes, he will write his name and his designation as deputy commissioner of taxes. So when the assistant commissioner of taxes makes the assessment, he will also write his name and designation as Deputy Commissioner of Taxes. And when the assessment is made by the Extra Assistant Commissioner of Taxes, he can also write his name and designation as Deputy Commissioner of Taxes. So that has to be kept in mind. And as per definition, the Assistant Commissioner of Taxes is a person appointed to be an Assistant Commissioner of Taxes under Section 3 of the Income Tax Ordinance 1984. So that has to be kept in mind. Okay. Then you see the definition of Bangladeshi company. Company, I have said to you that company is also a person as per Income Tax Ordinance. If you go to definition 20, the person is there, I believe. Sorry, not person. If you go to the definition, you will see maybe there are a number of persons, as I mentioned to you before, like the individual, the firm, the Hindu undivided family, an association of persons, company, corporate body, local authority, entity, fund, than any other artificial juridical person. So all these are actually persons. So one of them is company. So company could be of two types. Maybe a company is a Bangladeshi company or the company is a foreign company. So when we say Bangladeshi company, it means that company is formed and registered under the Companies Act 1913 or 1994. So there was an act here, Companies Act of 1913, which was introduced or enacted by the British. And later on, we followed that. And in 1994, we made some amendments and we got it passed in the parliament. So that is called the Companies Act 1994. So the Bangladeshi company has to be incorporated and registered under the Companies Act 1913 or 1994. Or it has to be established or constituted by or under any law for the time being in force in Bangladesh, having its registered office in Bangladesh. So the registered office of the company has to be in Bangladesh, has to be situated or located in Bangladesh. That is the prime condition. So you have to know that the company must be incorporated and registered under the Companies Act 1913 or 1994, and its registered office has to be in Bangladesh, or it could be constituted under any other law for the time being in force in Bangladesh. So that should be treated as a Bangladeshi company. And banking company, it has got the same meaning as in the Banking Companies Act 1991. So there is a Banking Companies Act 1991 and includes a body corporate established or constituted by or under any law for the time being in force, which transacts the business of banking in Bangladesh. So the purpose of the banking company is to transact banking transactions. That means it has to take deposits from the people and it has to invest the money of the people in productive sectors. So it will earn money and then it will pay interest to the depositors. So that's the business, main business. It gives loan or provides loan or grants loan to the people and realizes interest from the people and the capital, of course, the borrowed capital. So board, another definition is board. Board means the National Board of Revenue, as I told you before. board actually makes policies, government's policy on income tax, VAT, that means value-added tax, import duty, etc. So the board is responsible for making policies, and the board is headed by the Secretary of the Internal Resources Division. Internal Resources Division means under the Ministry of Finance, and the Secretary of the Internal Resources Division is the ex officio chairman of the National Board of Revenue. So he holds two positions at the same time. So whoever is the Secretary of the Internal Resources Division, he is the chairman of the National Board of Revenue. So his primary function is to formulate policies, tax policy of the government. And the board has got its own setup. Under the chairman, there are members of taxes, members of VAT, members of customs. So there are members, and one member is in charge of administration. So all these members are under him to support. And under the members, there are first secretaries, and under the first secretaries, there are second secretaries. So all these people actually constitute the setup of the National Board of Revenue. And the National Board of Revenue formulates the policies, and the policies are implemented by the Income Tax Department, Taxes, VAT Department, and Customs Department, headed by commissioners. That means there are different zones. They are working in the fields. So when they are working in the fields, they are responsible for realizing the revenue. So if there is a zone, it means that zone is headed by a commissioner of taxes, and the commissioner of taxes has got its own setup. He has got under him additional commissioner of taxes, joint commissioner of taxes, deputy commissioner of taxes, assistant commissioner of taxes, inspectors of taxes, and other staff members. So all these constitute a zone, and the zone has got a budget. That is, the budget is allocated by the National Board of Revenue, and the commissioner is supposed to realize the revenue. So this is all about board. And then let us go to the definition of business. What do you mean by business? As you understand very well, that business means trade or manufacture or any venture or concern in the nature of trade, commerce, or manufacture. It could be trading business, it could be manufacturing business. So some sort of commercial activities have to be there. It could also be providing of services. So if there is a computer company provides computer services, develop softwares, or sells hardware, etc., whatever it is, or does programming. So these are also commercial activities. So these activities also include business. And then come to another definition, capital asset. What is a capital asset? Capital is an asset. You have heard of different assets like fixed assets, current assets, liquid assets, circulating assets, intangible assets. So there are so many assets you have heard of. Now we are saying capital asset. So capital asset means property of any kind held by the SSC, whether or not connected with his business or profession. It might be connected with his business, or it might not be connected with his business, but does not include. But these assets do not include, stock in trade, consumable stores or raw materials, held for the purpose of his business or profession. That means whenever you have got raw materials for the business, raw materials you will use in the manufacture of a final product, this raw material will not be treated as capital asset. If you have raw materials of finished goods for trading purpose, that means you have bought finished goods and you will be selling the finished goods. So whenever you bought the finished goods, you are keeping it in the store. So these are your stocks in trade. And whenever you sell it, then it becomes your sale. So stock in trade will not be treated as capital asset. And also personal effects. What are the personal effects? The personal effects are movable property, including wearing apparel, jewelry, furniture, fixture, equipment, and vehicles. So these are actually personal effects, which are exclusively for personal use by and are not used for the purpose of business or profession. That means when I am using a motor car, if I use it for my profession as a doctor or as a chartered accountant, then it is not a capital asset because we are using it for our profession. It is not a it is a capital asset. But if we exclusively use it for our own purposes, that means personal purposes, that means I am not using it for my professional purpose. I do not go to the patients to examine him or her with the car or by the car, then it is not a capital asset. But if I use it for professional purpose or business purpose, if I go to the business house by the car, then definitely this is a capital asset. So here is the definition. When personal effects are there, these are generally movable assets, and they are used for personal purposes, then these are not capital assets. But if these are used for business purposes or professional purposes, then these will be treated as capital assets. So capital assets is actually necessary to determine in the sense that in order to calculate the capital profit or capital gains, if you want to calculate the capital gains, you need to identify the assets as capital assets. If the asset is not capital asset, then you cannot calculate capital gain out of it. So that's why you need to identify it, whether this is a capital asset or a non-capital asset. Okay. Then come to the point, chartered accountant. You are studying chartered accountancy and someday you will become a chartered accountant. So what does it mean? Chartered accountant, it is defined in the Chartered Accountants Order 1973, Presidential Order number 2 of 1973. So the definition of a chartered accountant is there, that you have been qualified as a chartered accountant from the Institute of the Chartered Accountants of Bangladesh after passing the required subjects in 3 levels, and you have fulfilled the conditions to practice as a chartered accountant. You have been given a COP, certificate of practice, and you are paying necessary fees to the ICAB or Institute of Chartered Accountants of Bangladesh. You may not be a member of the ICAB, you may not be a practicing member. You can actually work with an organization, with a company, with a corporate body, etc. That is also possible. Then you cannot practice without taking the certificate of practice. But you can be a member, non-practicing member. Then you see the definition of commissioner. Commissioner is a person appointed to be Commissioner of Taxes under Section 3 of the Income Tax Ordinance 1984. So Commissioner, as I have told you before, he is in charge of a zone. Zone means a jurisdiction. So in Dhaka city, you will find a number of zones. Zone 10, Zone 9, Zone 8, maybe LTU, something like that. So zone will be headed by a Commissioner of Taxes. And as I told you before, that Commissioner of Taxes will be held responsible for realization of revenue. And under him, there are a number of officers in the ranks of additional commissioners, joint commissioners, deputy commissioners, and assistant commissioners. So another type of commissioner is there, Commissioner Appeals. Commissioner Appeals is responsible for hearing the appeals preferred by the SSCs. We discussed an appellate joint commissioner of taxes. So appellate joint commissioner of taxes is below the rank of the commissioner of taxes. So sometimes there are commissioners of taxes appeals who are responsible for hearing appeals of big cases. And the appellate joint commissioner of taxes are responsible for hearing small cases or individual cases. Generally, company cases are heard by the commissioners of taxes appeals. So that's the difference, but the main function is the same. Main function is to give a verdict on the assessment order made by the Deputy Commissioner of Taxes in favor of the assessor or against the assessors, whatever it is. And then come to the point company, definition of company. I discussed the definition of Bangladeshi company. Now I am discussing the term company. A company means a company as defined in the Companies Act 1913 or Companies Act 1994, whatever it is. And it also includes a body corporate established or constituted by or under any law for the time being in force in Bangladesh, any nationalized banking or financial institution, insurance body, and industrial or business enterprise. Those are also included in the definition of a company. Then it also includes an association or combination of persons. Maybe there are 4 persons in an association and one of the persons is a company. If one of the persons in the association is a company, then the association would be treated as a company. It will not be treated as an association of person, rather it will be treated as an association as a company. Then an association or body incorporated by or under the laws of a country outside Bangladesh. So if there is an association or body incorporated or under any law outside Bangladesh, so maybe an association is working in Bangladesh or operating in Bangladesh, but it was incorporated by a foreign country, by the law of a foreign country, maybe in Pakistan, in India, in Sri Lanka, etc., wherever it is. So that company would also be treated as a company in Bangladesh. And then any foreign association or body not incorporated by or under any law, which the board may, by general or special order, declare to be a company for the purposes of this ordinance. That means whenever there is a foreign association here in Bangladesh, operating here in Bangladesh, it is not incorporated by or under any law, but the Board of Revenue, there is the National Board of Revenue, can treat it by a special order to be a company. So for example, a buying house is working here. Buying house is not constituted under any law. Here, not constituted, neither it is constituted under any law in another country. So in that case, it could be treated as a company by a special order by the National Board of Revenue. Then come to the definition, cooperative society. One moment, please. Okay, then we come to the point, cooperative society. This is also an entity and liable to pay taxes. And cooperative society means a cooperative society under the Cooperative Societies Act 2001. It might be constituted under any other law for the time being in force in Bangladesh as well. And then the definition of cost and management accountant is there. Cost and management accountant, you know that they are a member of the Institute of Cost and Management Accountants of Bangladesh, ICMAB. That is also established under a law. This is there is an act which is called the Institute of Cost and Management Accountants Act 2018. So earlier this was ordinance 1977, but later on it was converted into, act. And then you come to the definition dividend. So what is dividend? Generally, what you mean by a dividend? When you do business and you make a profit, that means you sell goods, purchase goods, and you deduct the administrative expenses, distribution expenses, marketing expenses, etc. Then you arrive at a profit. So is the profit dividend or it is something else? What do you think? If I say is dividend a profit? Any answer? No answer. Dividend is actually distributed by the company. When company makes a profit and pays taxes on it, and the remaining part of the profit, that is the profit after tax, is called dividend. And dividend could be given to the shareholders or it could be kept in the company. So it is said that a distribution or any distribution of a company of accumulated profits, whether capitalized or not, if such distribution entails the release by the company to its shareholders of all or any part of its assets or reserves. So meaning that the profit could be earned by the company and taxes should be paid on that profit, and later the profit could be retained in the company. So sometimes this is called retained earning. And whenever the company distributes the accumulated profits. So accumulated profits means it was accumulated in the company before. It was not distributed among the shareholders, rather it was accumulated. So that's why the distribution by a company of its accumulated profits, whether capitalized or not, if that distribution entails the release of all or any part of the assets or reserves. Sometimes you will find reserves in the company, general reserve or any other reserve. So the dividend is paid out of the reserve. And how the dividend is paid? Dividend is paid through an annual general meeting, which is called AGM. So in the AGM, it is decided whether dividend would be distributed among the shareholders or not. Sometimes you will find that 10% dividend has been declared by the company, or 5% or 20% or 25%, whatever it is. Sometimes bonus shares are issued by the company. There is also some sort of dividend. So these are the distribution of dividends, but dividend has got an elaborate discussion. Elaborate discussion means many other things would also be treated as dividend. For example, when any profit remitted outside Bangladesh by a company not incorporated in Bangladesh under Companies Act 1994, then it will be treated as a dividend. So what does it mean? A company is operating in Bangladesh, but it is not registered or incorporated under the Companies Act 1994. So when this company remits outside Bangladesh, that means it is remitting money to any other country, not in Bangladesh, to any other country. in that case, this remittance, the amount of the remittance would be treated as dividend. So this definition of dividend is to be discussed at length, and I believe you have to know in details about it. Then there are some tricky points here. Say, for example, any payment by a private company of any sum, whether as representing a part of the assets of the company or otherwise, by way of advance or loan to a shareholder, or any payment by any such company on behalf of or for the individual benefit of any such shareholder, to the extent to which the company in either case possesses accumulated profits. In order to make it simple, or if I can simplify it, it means that when the company has got accumulated profit, say for example, the company has got accumulated profit of taka 20 lakhs. This is a private company. And the company is making an advance of taka 20 lakhs or say taka 10 lakhs to a shareholder. That means the company is making an advance of taka 10 lakhs to its shareholders, one of the shareholders. If it is so, then this taka 10 lakh would be treated as dividend. Or if the company gives a loan to the shareholder or one of the shareholders to the extent of taka 10 lakh, this will also be treated as a dividend. And if the company gives loan up to taka 20 lakhs, it will also be treated as a dividend because the accumulated money is taka 20 lakhs. The company has got an accumulated amount of taka 20 lakhs. That means it is a reserve amount of taka 20 lakhs. And out of that taka, it has been given to one of the shareholders. And in that case, although it is said that it has been given as an advance or as a loan, rather it will be treated as a dividend. So these are some tricky points here with regard to the dividend. But if you issue bonus share, although it seems that you are giving to the shareholders from the accumulated fund, but it will not be treated as dividend as per definition of dividend in the Income Tax Ordinance 1984. Once upon a time, bonus share used to be treated as dividend, but nowadays it is not treated as a dividend. Rather, it is bonus share. So bonus share means it is a share and it is a capital of the company, and the number of shares of the shareholders would be increased by that amount. So that's why it's a capital receipt. And since it is a capital receipt for a shareholder, it would be treated not as dividend, rather as bonus share. Okay. Another tricky point is that any advance or loan made to a shareholder in the ordinary course of its business, where the lending of money is a substantial part of the business of the company.
Sir, Maghrib namaz jone break dile bhalo hoy sir. Maghrib namaz.
For how many minutes?
20 minutes, sir. 20 minutes.
20.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So come back after 20 minutes.